Hey guys, and welcome back. Today we're going to be making a watch strap using some really cool leather. And as you can see, I have a little helper. So yeah, we'll see how that turns out. But Princess is here for at least the start of the video. Who's the princess?
Wow.
You are. I'll be using this really cool piece of leather which is called a ghost waxed leather. It's vegetable tanned leather which has been coated in a cool waxy finish. So I'll be making a strap and then I'll buff off the high spots to be able to reveal the black underneath. And hopefully it'll look really, really cool. Now I'm going to be making my strap 1 centimeter smaller on either end simply because I have relatively small wrists and I've always found that the normal size for me is always a bit too long. So let's go ahead and start cutting. Can I have the ruler please, Jen? The metal ruler, yep. Thank you.
Tu coupes pour de vrai là?
Ah bah oui, je le coupe pour de vrai.
Moi aussi j'ai un stylo, un ciseau pour couper pour de vrai. Là tu fais plein de bracelets. Tu fais l'autre partie du bracelet.
I'm making the other half of the strap.
Est-ce que t'es beau quand je te dessine?
Oh wow, is that me?
Et derrière il y a le sac à main avec maman.
Ah, show her a quick look. Oh wow, so who's that?
C'est maman.
Is that mummy? No, her handbag. It's a very big handbag. Gosh, she's got very nice lipstick.
Elle en a mis un peu partout.
It's a bit all over the place, is it? I'm going to be using a French skiver, which is this thing here, just to skive down the inside edges a bit. But for this, I want to make sure it's really, really razor sharp, because I only have one pass at this. Now, let's not forget that we need to add in the fold, which will be about here. Let me mark this out for myself. What's she doing, Jen?
Je suis en train de claquer des dents.
Now the fold is going to be here, so I want to skive this part down as well.
Ça s'appelle comment ça?
What part?
Ça là.
L'outil?
Oui.
It's called a French skiver.
Et
I'm going to skive it down really, really thin because I want to be able to fold this back on itself. Ah! You see, I took too much off. See? Took too much off here. But that's okay because it should fit into the stitching and should be protected by the stitching. So that should be okay. That should just be okay. So have a look. Eesh, a bit too thin. That should be okay. Once it's all glued down, should be fine.
Tu veux faire tout?
Yep. Just want to take off a bit of the edges.
Ne casse pas comme l'autre. Hein. Casse pas.
I'm going to try not to break it. That's right, Jen.
Tu appuies très très fort pour que ça marche.
Not that hard.
Moi, je sais faire plus fort que toi.
Oh yeah?
Oui. Regarde comment je fais. Bof!
Oh wow. Yeah, that's a lot.
C'est très très dur hein,
Yeah,
à faire.
I can imagine. And do it again on the other side of the strap.
Mais par contre, tu casses pas comme l'autre.
I'll try not to go through it, that's right. Whoopsie. Did it again.
Mais c'est pas grave, tu vas le plier et ça fera rien.
Yeah, that's right. It should be fine. It should be fine once it's all folded over. Yeah. It'll be fine.
Tes trous, ils sont rigolos, hein.
Are you mocking my skiving? You're teasing my skiving, are you?
Ils sont très rigolos. Regarde le
Careful
trou
your
dedans.
fingers.
Regarde le trou qui est en forme de dent de souris.
Yes, you think
C'est
that
un
hole
peu
looks like
rigolo.
a mouse's tooth.
C'est un peu rigolo.
It's funny too, is it? So let's grab a bit of this. There we go. This is just a piece of vegetable tanned leather that I'll be using to make the raised areas on the inside. You see, Jeanne? I cut a small piece, and that's going to go in the middle there. And that's going to make a raised area, so when I flatten it all down, that will be thicker than the rest.
Et les trous?
And the holes? We'll put holes in here as well. Yep. There we go, that's better. Not amazing, but it'll do. Yeah? Yeah? You think it'll do? Okay, good. So, we've got our pieces. We've got the 2 pieces for the straps, and we've got the inner liners. I'm going to skive this one down a bit, just towards the end. There we go. So, Jeanne, I am going to go ahead and sand this down very slightly just to expose the fibres and to give... You're not listening to me, are you? Well, you guys on the internet can listen to me. I'm sanding down the top grain of this piece of leather just to expose the fibres underneath and give the glue somewhere it can hold on to. So today we're going to be using a water-based glue instead of the neoprene cement, which I usually use. I don't generally like this one. I find it just doesn't work for my uses. I mean, I know it works perfectly for many other people, but I've become used to using neoprene cement, and generally this one I find doesn't hold as well. But it's the one I'm going to be using today because I want to test it again. It's been a long time and I want to see if I can get it to work and just practice with it. And I feel like this is a great practice test. There we go. It was a bit. Now, one advantage of this glue is the setting time is quite low, which means it gives me time to reposition my pieces of leather as I go. And that, I must admit, is a big advantage because I've not really done this kind of strap before. In fact, I've never made a raised strap. I tried once, but it was a complete failure. So if this manages, it would have been, well, I'd be very happy. Let's just put it like that. Yeah, definitely too much glue. Reposition. There we go. Okay. Yeah, makes a lot of noise, doesn't it? There we go. And I have my cut. It's not perfect, but it will do. Okay, let's glue things up, but just to make sure I'm leaving myself enough space for the little spring bars, I'm going to be using these needles as spacers. These are actually quite thick needles and they will do just perfectly for spacers. Let's get gluing. This is the fun part. Ouh, je me suis déjà trompé. You see, I'm already getting things wrong. I didn't need to put glue everywhere on this one. I just needed to put glue on the ends here. But that's okay. We're here to learn. At least I'm here to learn. You guys are probably just here to enjoy my failures. Or, yeah, whatever. Maybe you can learn as well. Learn not to make my mistakes. That could be a very good learning here. Already I am putting way too much glue. I know that. And I'm not doing much to mitigate that fact, but that's okay. This is a mess. That's okay. We're working with a very forgiving leather and you will see why in a second. Fold this back round like that and press. We're working with forgiving leather because it's waxed leather, so any residue from the glue that I'm getting on the waxy surface won't really show and won't really matter because I'll be taking that waxy surface off anyway, so it's fine. This gives me, as I mentioned, a lot of flexibility and it's a forgiving material, as I mentioned. There we go. That's one done, partially. Now let's not make the same mistake again. Let's only use the amount of glue that we need at this stage. That's already a lot of glue. Actually, that wasn't too much glue. Huh. Is it possible that I may be learning from my mistakes? Nah, highly doubtful. There we go. So here are my two pieces glued up, more or less. What I'm going to do next is add on a backing strip of leather to this, and then we're going to be pushing down the sides, which have been skived down, and raising that centerpiece. Hopefully this works. For this, I'll go back to my 2 centimeter strip of vegetable tanned leather. I've marked roughly how much I need here. There we go. So that's my first piece cut, and that's my second piece cut, and I'm just going to skive off the very, very tips here. There we go. That's perfect. There we go. And this is when the fun really starts. So, let's start with the smaller piece. Okay. And we are going to do the first glue up. Now, since it will be on my wrist, I want it slightly curved. That's the idea. So I am going to try and impose that curve right now while I'm gluing. There we go. And I want to also press down that raised piece in the middle. And that is our first half done. And it's looking quite good. I'll have to see how it looks once it's all glued up and once the glue has dried. Let's make sure we're positioned. Again, the nice thing about this glue is that it is repositionable, which gives me much more flexibility in working with such small pieces than the neoprene cement glue would have. For the next piece, we're going to be proceeding more or less the same way. So, let's grab the second piece of our strap and glue up. Again, I want to impose upon it that initial fold. Just here. There we go. And I'm pressing down my edges, exposing, in theory, the raised area in the middle, but most importantly making sure that my edges are glued down tight. Now, whenever I've used this glue in the past, the edges have always been the parts that have failed me, so I really want to be very careful that everything here is nicely glued up. And most importantly, at this point at least, I want to make sure that I give it a long time to dry. So that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be leaving these to dry for basically a day, just to be on the safe side.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. See you tomorrow. So I've given these a day to dry, and I am very pleased with the results so far. And I know already I've made a mistake. I forgot to add in a small keeper here, which is going to bug me. So I'm going to try and basically remove some of this backing, add in the keeper, glue the thing back up. It won't be the same, but yeah, I want to try and get it done as good as possible. So we'll go ahead and do that. Hey, fun. So my keepers will obviously be made out of the same material. I'm just going to trace out those lines here. So to determine the length of my keeper, I'm going to be putting both pieces of leather next to each other like this, and then wrapping my piece of the keeper around basically, and seeing where that ends up. So the first mark is where it ends up, and the second mark is where I want to be cutting it to / skiving it to. There we go. To bevel, I'm using my arc edge beveler here from Crimson Hides in the 0 size. So I don't want to bevel all the way here because this is where I'm going to be gluing the other side of that keeper. Now at this stage it's time for me to burnish my keepers, and to do that I'm going to be using Tokonol. Tokonol is what I consider to be a miracle drug for burnishing, which is basically once you try Tokonol, you can never go back to whatever you've been using before. So yeah, if you haven't tried it, try it out. You will not regret it. And you can see the difference that burnishing makes to this leather. That black is really quite popping now. Well, it really didn't look like much apart from grey before, but now it looks gorgeously black. And yeah, this is why I'm really excited about this build, to be honest. I feel like this is going to be one of those projects that's going to be insanely rewarding towards the absolute end of the project. And just for that, I really, really am excited to see how it's going to go. Now, if there was ever a moment to apply the tiniest bit of glue to this project, then this is it. And that is already a substantial amount. Yeah, I guess we can do that. This glue is only here to hold it in temporarily in place. And actually, I forgot to skive that side. You see, I knew things would go wrong. They're going wrong. Of course they are. Nothing's ever easy when you don't know what you're doing. Hold it in place, and again, this is just to hold it in place while it glues up, so I'm not too worried about marking the leather on this one. Let's quickly skive off the end on this one as well, because obviously I forgot to do that. There we go. Okay, so that part is done. The next part is going to start addressing the edges on here, and this is when the build, as I mentioned, starts getting quite rewarding. It's nice to see the stiffness on this one actually. I'm using 120 grit sandpaper on this just to make sure that my edge is as smooth as possible, as even as possible I should say. Now I do want to be careful when sanding because the tolerances on this are actually quite minute. I need the sizing to be exactly 20mm, otherwise it's going to look a bit odd on the watch. So I do have to be quite careful, and what's nice, I can reference it onto my table here, and I can see I have just the slightest amount to play with on the other side. So I'm good. I'm going to leave the sanding at a bare minimum here. Now this time I'm switching up to my Little King Goods beveler here. It's the number 2 size for the outside. This is this side of the strap, but I'll go back to the Crimson Hide's Zero Arc for the inside because I want the rounded side to be slightly more round on this than on this. I don't know if that's necessarily how we're supposed to do things, but it's how I'm doing it today. So yeah, that's it. Now to keep my curves in check, I'm going to be using just a roll of sellotape here and resting my leather on it, and this will give me something I can push against without risking a bend in my leather, or at least maintaining the bend that is already in my leather. Actually, you know what, I think I'm going to be using the same beveler for the underside as well. Simply because I have more materials that I want to take off than I actually thought I did, so yeah, only fools change their minds, as they say, something like that. So I'm going to be dyeing the edges black here, being very, very careful not to put black dye all over the place. So, looking at my template, I want a row of stitching roughly about here, and the other one here, so my keeper should be here. So I'm just going to roughly scribe out where my 2 rows of stitching will be, because I want to then fold the leather, the backing leather back to here, if possible, so that I can slide my keeper down there, so glue the whole thing back up and get this area ready for my stitching. But first I need to adjust the edges, because once that's done I won't be able to adjust the edges, at least not behind the keeper here, so I want to do that first. The same process applies here. I want to sand down, bevel down then I want to dye it black and then burnish using toconol, and then I can go ahead and install the keeper. Okay, let's see if I can peel this over, or if maybe the glue is doing a good job. So luckily for me, this was glued directly to the wax back here, which means that it peeled off really easily and stopped peeling at pretty much the areas where my skiving exposed some of those fibres. So yeah, that was a lucky accident, and I am glad that I'll be stitching down here, and it looks like I am good to go. Yeah. So it's now time to go ahead and glue up, and I have deliberately left this untied because I don't want the extra bulk of a knot just here, and I've left the threads long, the tails of the thread long, because they'll be glued down anyway and sandwiched in between here. For the other keeper I'll be making a small knot, making sure it's as small as possible there. Yeah, let's go ahead and glue this thing up. As always, let's try and use just enough glue, not too much, but not too little, making sure that I cover my edges as well, because I won't be doing those again. Yeah. Finger spreading, of course. Why not? Let's make a mess of things while we can. Please don't do that. Yeah. So far, pretty pleased with that. I'm going to clamp this all down and let it dry for a bit. And we'll go ahead and start stitching. And this is something I'm also really looking forward to, because that contrast for the thread should be really fun. Should be really nice. And I've got some really cool thread as well. Actually, you know what? Let me show you what I've got in store for this. For this, I have some Maisie M30, which is 0.3 millimeters thick, which is some of the thinnest threads I've used so far, but hopefully it's going to give me something very, very precise looking, and it will help the contrast pop really nicely. So yeah, we'll see. It's the MS001, which I believe is just that simple plain black. So this is linen thread, because yeah, I want the best, and I think that linen is nicer than polyester, so that's just it. Let's go. For my stitching, I'm using my Crimson Hides stitching irons. These are in the 3.25mm sizing, and they are the French stitching chisels, French blades, French teeth, which means they are slants, not diamonds, which I find give me a nicer stitch. But to be honest, by the time you've hammered your stitches down compared to diamond stitches, it really doesn't look much different, if anything at all. So yeah. There you have it, guys. I have my two pieces. I'm getting very excited. So I have now reached what I believe to be the most exciting part of the whole build, bar maybe just the installation of the final piece. That's when I'm going to be able to finally buff off the high spots on these pieces and expose the dark leather underneath. Now I'm going to try and find a suitable linen cloth to do this, because I want it to be quite abrasive. This is actually quite thick stuff. So I'm going to start with this strap. And yeah, I have no idea what to expect on this one. So I just have a piece of linen. This is actually quite nerve-wracking for me. I have no idea what to expect. This should be really interesting. Let's just get cracking. Already that is making a huge difference, just a few barely seconds of rubbing, and it's already started to expose some of that nice dark black leather underneath. So for now it's quite funky, I have to admit. Interesting, definitely, but also pretty funky. Let's keep going. Okay, so one thing I have to tell you, which won't be visible on camera, is just how smooth this leather feels, and it really does feel very, very nice to the touch. Now, my fingers are probably full of wax as well, and that's probably helping with the feel of it and just the smoothness of it, but it really does feel nice, which I guess it should be expected really, because you are buffing with a small cloth, and anything you'll be buffing like that with a small cloth will get really, really soft over time. Okay, I think I'm quite happy with where that is. I'm quite enjoying this. Let me give you a closer look. So yeah, as you can see, it's not black, it's gone greyish in colour, but it does look gorgeous, and I'm just loving the contrast with the wax that's remaining on the top there. I think I'm going to leave it at that. I won't touch it more than that, but I think I will add on some waxes just on top. I think those extra waxes might help bring the black out a bit more. And this is just to compare it with the other piece. That is after the buffing, obviously. But you can see the difference is pretty insane. Now, some of you might actually have wanted it to be slightly less buffed, and I get that. That's fine. But I think this is an aesthetic I'm quite happy with. And obviously that's the back, just to remind you of what we're dealing with here, working with. So this is just vegetable tanned leather, actually from the Conceria Tannery, so it's really nice leather actually, and that should age nicely too. But the top part is what I'm very, very interested in seeing how this is going to age. Yeah, let's go ahead and do this piece, and I'll get back to you. The last thing I'm going to do is use some of this Saphir Creme Incolore. It's basically some really nice polish. And I don't know what it's going to do to the wax. I seriously don't. I think it's going to look great anyway. It might... Yeah, it's going to darken everything a bit slightly, but that's okay. Bring out some of that black, so not too bad. I'm not too worried about that. It should protect it a bit and darken the black, which is what I'm mainly looking for here. Now that is looking seriously cool. The shine on it is just insane. I'm loving that. Damn, I'm loving that. I also like the fact that we've got quite a lot of extra wax left over here. Yeah. So let's put this bad boy on and see how it looks. So overall, I'm very pleased with the result. I think that this leather really does look gorgeous. It is very peculiar, very particular, and not to everyone's taste, which is fine. It's to my taste, and I love it. And I'm sure I could have done things better along the way. I'm sure my technique could be improved, but I also feel very confident that I've grown a lot in my own personal journey of development in leathercraft, because just a few years ago when I started making straps like this, the fact that these were teeny tiny straps made it so complicated for me to actually make, and I just really wasn't happy with the final result. So I guess practice makes perfect, or at least perfecter, because I'm clearly not perfect, but I'm getting there, and I'm really pleased with the result. Talking of leathers, this leather is very forgiving. Because of the waxy surface, it means that if I got any oils or any glue on that surface, that wax was going to protect it and keep the leather pristine underneath. So my fingers, as you have noticed probably throughout this video, got covered at different points with glue and with a different leather. that would have been a punishment and a half to have glue all over my leather piece here, and I wouldn't have been able to keep it nice and clean looking. So definitely this leather has helped with masking some of my errors. But all in all, yeah, really pleased with this. So I'd love to hear your thoughts, guys, in the comments below. What would you have done differently? What leathers you'd like me to try out or would recommend me to try out for something like this? And yeah, would you be making one of these with this leather for yourself? You let me know. So yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed this video, hopefully you've learned something, and hopefully I'll see you very soon for some more crafting.